Ruin My Childhood.
Welcome to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Kat.
I'm Mike.
And today we are going to be talking about Roundhouse.
Roundhouse is something that I've never seen or heard of or have any recollection of. And the reason we're going to talk about it is I made Katrina watch Pagemaster, which she had never seen before. And I was hoping that she would really like it. And you guys should listen to that episode. And so she picked Roundhouse because she thought that I would like it, and she's gonna tell me why I'll like it and what it's about, what it is. I don't even know what it is. I did some research online, and I still have no idea what it is. So why don't you tell me what it is, what the show is, and why you think I'm gonna like it?
It's a sketch comedy show, sort of in the vein of SNL, but for kids.
Okay, so but it was on Nickelodeon, right?
It was.
So around the same time All That was on, so what separates it from All That? Because I'm very familiar with All That. And I loved All That.
It had a lot more music, it had dance numbers, and it was just a little bit more interesting, fast-paced, and edgy.
Okay. So I really have no idea what it is. So are there any people on the show that I would recognize?
I don't think so.
Huh.
I don't distinctly remember any specific characters. So like All That had some specific characters who actually spawned some spin-off shows. It had spawned like Amanda Bynes and
Kenan Thompson.
Right. So there's some people who like had a chance at legitimate careers coming out of that show because they really built up these characters, whereas Roundhouse had a few like long-running character types, but it was very much an ensemble in that it ran more like a live show would. So it was kind of like watching a really good school play. I mean, like, that doesn't make it sound good.
No, it doesn't.
It was very much like watching like it's like a multicam of an actual theater production.
Huh. I have no idea what to expect. I think we should just watch it.
Yeah.
And roll the credits.
Whenever my life gets me so down, I know I can go down. Down, 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 and the fun never ends. As long as the music keeps playing, you know what I'm saying. I know that I can find a friend. Down at the Roundhouse.
All right, we're back from watching Roundhouse, which Mike hated and made very clear the entire time we watched it.
I want to say that I hated it. I think this is definitely a show that, like, you and I can see that you enjoyed it. You were laughing.
We were
throughout.
like 3 seconds in, you're like, ugh.
Well, it's just the production. It was very, very 90s. Very 90s.
No, the production value was great. The problem is that it's hard to find good quality
it took
online.
So we went through every avenue we could to try to find episodes. We went through Amazon. We looked on Netflix. We looked on Crackle. We looked on Voodoo. We looked on everything. And we found one person on, I think it was Dailymotion, that uploaded just random episodes.
Like, we're probably going to get viruses on our computer.
Well, it's Dailymotion. I think we're fine. But the quality was really weird. So we wanted to try to watch episodes from multiple seasons. But everything from any season that wasn't season 1 was inaudible, super blurry. So we watched 3 episodes from season 1. So we watched I think the first one was on family.
Right.
The New Kid, and sports. So one thing that I wasn't expecting. So you told me it was like a sketch show, and I thought it was going to be like All That SNL where it was just a bunch of random sketches. One of the things I thought was interesting about it was, even though it was a bunch of random sketches, they all kind of had a theme.
Yeah, they were tied into a central theme, and it was kind of like it wasn't really heavy on morals, but it was kind of like a warm, fuzzy, make you feel better about life kind of lesson.
I can see that. So like the first, I did kind of roll my eyes on the first episode. We watched the family one, and like it starts off with a like announcer broadcast like guy, and he's like, you can get rid of a cheap neighbor or a cheap boyfriend, and it's like, oh, we're gonna go to the movies again, and then it's like, you can get rid of an awful neighbor, but you can't get rid of family, and then it did like stereotypical dad, stereotypical mom, brother, sister, and all that stuff, and then the grandma, and I kind of was like, this is kind of corny, but the dad was a reoccurring character in all three
Right.
episodes, and the
Yeah.
mom too. So the same. It's one big cast of. I have no idea how many people were actually on it. How many would you say conservatively were on there?
Probably about 15.
And there was a lot of dancing. There was a lot more music and dancing than I thought. I'd say it's pretty evenly split between music and sketch.
Right. It's a lot more like In Living Color than anything else.
So and it makes a lot of sense. So after we watched the 3 episodes, I went on IMDb and looked it up a little bit, and the guy who created it was actually one of the writers for In Living Color.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of makes sense. Only 19 people put this on IMDb gave themselves credit on IMDb, and only 4 people have a photo.
Right.
And unfortunately, one of them passed.
Right. Here's why. So IMDb, you only get an IMDb page as an actor if someone with an IMDb Pro account creates that page for you by crediting you on a project. So a lot of these people, like the dancing, of course, it's very 90s. It's not as dated as a lot of other 90s dance routines that you see on other shows from the 90s. They're pretty solid dance moves, and it's because they're all really legitimately talented dancers on this show.
A couple of these people dance for, like, Michael Jackson and Paula Abdul.
Like, yeah, Paula Abdul, Michael Jackson, like, all of those huge numbers from, like, the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of these dancers went on to do. So it makes sense to me that, you know, this show was on before IMDb existed, like before the internet was really a thing. And so at that point, they had probably kind of like honed their careers into more like dance related stuff and probably touring with musicians. So they could legitimately have like really excellent careers in that field, but they don't really have an acting internet presence.
Right. There are certain things that I think this did really well, and there were certain things... I think this was definitely a show you needed to watch as a kid to be able to appreciate as an adult. There were a couple jokes in each episode that I kind of like chuckled at.
Right.
But I was really impressed with... I think the kid that's in most of the sketches is the kid who passed away at like 26 years old.
Right.
I think his name was Dominic something.
Dominic Lucero.
Yes. He is in almost every single sketch.
And he was in Newsies. So that's something that I have actually seen him in.
And he was one of the lead dancers for Michael Jackson before the show.
Crazy.
So he is in every single sketch.
He's in every dance number.
And he's like front row center in every single dance number.
Right.
And so one of the things I was impressed with is this does not seem like it seems like it's a solid 24 minutes of no cuts, no breaks.
It really does. Only for commercial breaks.
But even that, it looks like there wasn't full things because at the break, when they would go to a commercial and when it would come back, you'd see people dancing.
Right.
So there would be a couple dancers, like only 2 or 3 people dancing. So like the main people can get like a minute or 2 rest. But this kid was in every dance move and he was doing crazy dances. He was in every sketch. And I'm like, when did this kid get a chance to breathe on this show?
No, and like you see them like in some cases they're coming straight out of an intense dance number and they're like trying to catch their breath still halfway through the next sketch.
And they're also pulling their own sets.
Yeah.
So these sets are all
the stage is
like,
round.
Yeah, it's a round stage and then they're all on like there's like 3 platforms that are on like
rollers.
Like rollers that they roll around themselves. And so that was something I was really impressed with. Like the choreography had to be really tight. Their timing had to be good. Everyone on the cameras had to know exactly where they're going to be and when.
Right. I remember, maybe this is from later seasons, but I think the stage actually like rotates in other seasons, which makes it a lot easier to transition from one set to another because literally you can just turn it around and you have a whole different set.
Right.
So I think this might be, because we only watched season 1, they were still rolling things around on their own.
But that was something I was really impressed with. Like whenever they're done with the intro theme, you see them all pull out the sets. And then throughout you see maybe a couple of guys in like black t-shirts who will go and push off smaller things while people are dancing or in the middle of a thing. But for the most part, all the actors are doing all the sets.
Yeah, it seemed like it legitimately looks like it's a live to tape show with 3 cameras and the live audience. It seems like they rehearsed this whole thing probably for the week prior and then just ran the show the same way you would a play.
Right.
Because you can tell very distinctly, I mean, like on multicam shows, they record from the 3 cameras, and the director is, telling the switchboard which camera they're recording from. So, not the switch, Mike.
No. I was just thinking when you're saying like which cameras they use. There was an episode that we watched where clearly they had an issue with the cameras.
Right. Anyway, so when you're watching a multicam show, something like Big Bang Theory, when they switch between camera angles, that's the same take.
Right.
Whereas on any other regular traditional TV show, like something like Glee, for instance, what they're doing between takes is they're doing multiple camera setups where they'll move the camera, they'll do a wide shot, then they'll do a 2 shot. If there are 2 characters, they'll get both of them in frame. Then they'll do an over-the-shoulder shot. Then they'll do close-ups. And for each of those, they're moving lights. They're moving, sometimes the actors, they're moving pieces of the set. They're cheating shots. And going from the close-up shot to the wide shot, those takes were not happening at the same time. They were probably happening, maybe an hour apart. They're just running the scene over and over. Whereas with multicam, what you see from shot to shot is all the same legitimate take. And you can tell that that's how this was run, because things are slightly out of place from one shot to the next, but they're out of place in the exact same way. And
you also see the other cameras periodically.
Yeah. So that's really different from how most stuff this dance intense and music heavies run on TV. And so it's really ambitious and kind of impressive in that respect.
I agree. So while I didn't necessarily love all the content, like, I can't imagine being on a show like that. And,
no.
Like, it was pretty crazy. Like, I have a lot of respect for those actors doing all that and going from, like, there's this one kid who's kind of funny looking. He's like one of the main hosts, I guess. Like, he does a lot of the background narration.
The guy with like the gap teeth?
Yes, him. I actually thought for a second he might be like a young Paul Scheer.
Dudinsky? Is that the Dudinsky?
I have no idea. But there's an episode where he goes from doing like sketch, dance, sketch, and then he has to go just like singing, and you can tell he's kind of like tired and a little uncomfortable, but he does it. So overall, I'd say like it is an ambitious way to do a show, and I gotta give kudos to that.
Right.
And then there were a few jokes that did land for me. So like, do you want to go through the episodes and hit the highlights?
So the first one that we watched, Family. The whole premise of it was kind of like, this is your family, like it or not, and you should appreciate them. There was definitely like a really bad Bill Cosby impersonation. Really like spectacular. And what I liked about this show was that it took the parts of sketch comedy that are always really awkward, that you just kind of excuse, and it called them out. And made it funny because
pop culture stuff.
There was a lot of pop culture stuff. But that's just kind of something like, there are so many shows that we've watched that there are these relics of Bill Cosby whereas he's been exiled from society. And it's so weird to think back on how much stuff he was in back in the day. But there were some jokes that I thought it was interesting that even though you can tell it's like a live to tape, if the joke didn't land, they didn't add laugh track to make it funny. They just moved on like you do on SNL.
That you have to. One of the jokes that landed for me in the first one, with the family one, is they do like this is your older sister, this is your older brother, and then they do a song, and the dad starts singing, and then the mom starts singing, and then she says something, I don't know what the actual rhyme was, but then she goes, the mom's gonna say the word bitch, and then she stops, so she goes, something rich, something, it all rhymes, and then it sounds like she's gonna say that, and she stops and says, you're gonna make me a difficult person, and everything else. Like, that's so dumb, but I laughed at that.
Well, and what's funny is like the things that this show talks about are things that are not super relevant to us watching it as adults, but thinking back on watching it as a kid, like that spoke to my soul.
Well, I get it.
One whole sketch in the first episode revolves around the dad like tracking down the perpetrators of his pet peeves, like
leading
things,
the lights on and
yeah,
stuff.
leaving the lights on. Like
Dadnet.
we all had a parent who would like hunt us down and be like, who left the hallway light on? Like
Right.
all of us, who touched the thermostat, and just like talked about these aspects of being a kid that, you know, I kind of forgot about, honestly.
Or having siblings, like the one sibling had this sympathizer keyboard with had like parent sounds, and then it came with 25 ailments like fake broken limbs, paste on your chicken box, and it says, if you can't get love, settle for pity.
Right.
And I was like, that's dark.
Middle child.
Yeah. And then the other thing I did like on that episode was there's like a fake infomercial. They did this in all 3 episodes where they had obviously just a big piece of cardboard that they cut out in the shape of like a TV frame. They would like sit in it, pretend to be doing commercials. And they had like a PSA for hand-me-down syndrome. And it's like they'd give the shirt off their backs not to have to wear one off of somebody else's.
Right.
Kind of thing. I was like, that's kind of clever. Like there was some good wordplay.
Isn't that interesting though? It's like there's so many aspects of being a kid that we kind of forget about. Like back in the day, hand-me-downs were just, you know, a part of life. These days, kids don't wear hand-me-downs that often compared to when we were growing up. One, because all the clothing these days is manufactured in China and it falls apart after 3 wearings. But 2, like, clothes were like 3 times as expensive when you compare them to wages.
Back then, clothing, I remember when I was in like 5th, 6th grade, I really wanted, what were they called? No Rules?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
those shirts.
rules.
And those were like $20 for like a kid's t-shirt.
Everyone wanted Vans.
Yeah.
It didn't always happen.
So I was lucky. I'm the oldest, so I didn't really have too many hand-me-downs.
I only had hand-me-downs.
I had a few things from my cousin Steven, but my cousin Steven was much bigger than me.
Yeah.
So I really couldn't really ever wear any of his stuff just because he was always like wider than me and taller. So I got lucky. I didn't have a lot of hand-me-downs, but I did wear,
I got it
cheap
all.
stuff.
I was the youngest of 3 girls, and I had cousins, Sasha and Adriana, who would send us hand-me-downs.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You had no hope.
That's all I had. But, like, even prom dresses. Like, it would be unimaginable to ask a girl to wear, like, a hand-me-down prom dress unless it was coveted.
Right.
Like, she really wanted it from, you know, a sibling or something. But back in the day, like, that was just part of life, you know? Weird.
Yeah, I got, like,
and, like, kids used to have to, like, save up for stuff they really wanted, and sometimes it would take them all year, whereas these days there's a lot more, like, instant gratification.
Well, the things you even go into Target, and, like, Target clothing is a lot. I feel like it's a lot cheaper than it was when we were growing up.
Yeah, way cheaper.
But we're in you mentioned earlier, like, we're in a disposable clothing era.
Yeah.
Like, people will literally go to, like, Forever 21 to buy a shirt for one night.
Right. And, like, toys don't last like they used to. It sounds weird to be that person, but, like, things aren't built the way they used to be, even for our generation.
I look down the toy aisle every once in a while at Target and, like, look at the action figures that I had as a kid, and not just because of that nostalgia factor, but they were made better. They had, like, articulation. Like, toys now don't even, like, move.
Right.
So that's weird.
I pity children.
It did definitely make you think about your childhood in this episode.
A lot.
So the sports one, or New Kid was the next one.
New Kid
right?
was the second episode we watched.
That one was alright. I did like how they kept referring to like New Kids on the Block. Anytime someone said the New Kid, you'd see like people in the background. Oh.
And instead of MTV, it was MTV.
I laughed really
TV.
I
actually
laughed
really
at that too. So EMPTYV. It was stupid, but I laughed at that.
But this was like the age of MTV. I mean, MTV Network spawned Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
So
well,
they could do
MTV
that.
was still doing music videos. I mean, I got really into TRL in 6th grade, which was in like 2000.
TRL was the best. Weren't they going to bring that back?
I think they did, but we don't have
Kids
cable,
these days-
so we don't know.
Kids these days don't know a good thing. They don't know a good thing. Oh, man.
I did like they talked about the American Family and the New Kid, and it's like 2.5 children, and like half there was like a cardboard cutout of a kid cut in half.
Half a child.
So there's little stupid jokes like that. Where
There are
you're
a lot of things where if you're paying attention, they're really funny, and they're like half-second jokes, and they're just like one after the other. So it's solid sketch comedy.
It's literally a joke every like 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of little ones that I'm sure I missed as I was taking notes. But like this episode, I actually think I liked the family episode better. Like there were a few gags in this one that I liked where at 2 different points in the episode, people who were newer than the new kid were like, "Oh, you're the new kid?
Right.
Ew." And kind of thing. It was just like, it's stupid, but I'm kind of like, I get it. Like that's how people actually kind of are.
This episode had this random bit that they did where the cameras were doing really awkward framing and intense close-ups and kind
And then
of
it
like
kept moving
and shaking around, and we were like, what is going on with this? I think it might have started out as an accident and they just ran with it.
But then one of the actors referred to it.
Right, and then like
Then
in
it
the
stops.
middle of it, an actor's like, can you stop doing that? And then the cameras straighten out.
Yeah.
And they make no other reference to it the
And
rest
it's
of
weird
the
that they
episode.
don't edit the "can you stop that" part like out of the episode. But I guess it's kind of
No.
hard.
I think there was like a camera problem, and so they just decided to exaggerate it
got
and
it.
address it that way.
Yeah, but it's funny. Like the kid or the actor definitely acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And it's weird that they didn't like edit that out. But I think it'd be kind of hard to edit anything out of the show because there's always stuff going on in the background.
And if that wasn't what happened, I just don't understand what that joke was.
I don't
super
know either.
weird, super random.
Maybe it was relevant to something that happened on live TV at some point somewhere, and it's
I
just
have no idea.
a reference that went over our heads.
There were a lot of dance routines in this episode.
This one, and then the sports one was like every 30 seconds there was a new one.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, and like they were good. There weren't any dance routines that I looked at and thought that they were bad. Like they were
all
still
different.
Right, even though they were dated mostly because of the clothes and the music, like the skill that these dancers had made it look good, and it still looks good.
I agree. The dancing was pretty solid. Like we obviously have more sophisticated dancing now, depending on the artist.
I mean,
but-
we have a style.
But the stuff was good. Like it definitely looked well rehearsed. Like everybody did a good job. Like we were at Universal Studios. We've been to Universal Studios 3 times in the last like 3 or 4 weeks, and you see the Durmstrang students doing like their stick stuff, and then you see I can't remember what the school the girls are from. Beauxbatons. We were there, and like they were off.
Yeah.
Like the dancing on this was better than Universal Studios putting on their little Harry Potter dance shows. So that's something that this is better
is that
than.
really setting the bar?
That's true, I guess. Those frogs.
God, the singing frogs are the worst.
The show said crap a lot.
They did say crap a lot.
And that's another reason I know I didn't watch this, because I remember when I was in like 5th or 6th grade and Hey Arnold said crap. Like Helga is like talking to Arnold like the 2 bullies beat the crap out of each other, and I was like, oh.
They say crap a lot in that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like crap kind of disappeared from kids' TV for whatever reason. And yet kids are like making porn on Instagram. I don't know. Like childhood is way different now.
They made fun of Pauly Shore on this one too.
They did.
Pauly Shore and Paul Simon, they called it Pauly Simon.
Oh, and well, there's another mashup in the next episode. But this episode did a lot of like the calling out sketch comedy tropes. There's this one exchange where one person says, "Feel like talking about it? No. Feel like singing about it? I thought you'd never ask."
Yeah. And this is the one where that kid like clearly didn't really want to be singing. Like he looked really awkward the whole time.
Right. Like there was no good way to make that transition from the sketch to the musical number, so they just made it super awkward, and we're like, this is how awkward sketch comedy is.
Well, the thing that was weird about it was he was standing in the middle of the giant stage by himself, but the girl he was singing to, who was also singing back, went and sat with a crowd of girls. So it was like she had something new. They all had their arms around him, and he's just like standing by himself.
Yeah, it was super
really
awkward.
weird.
I think that might just be his face, though.
Yeah, he is a little awkward looking.
So the third episode started out really strong.
That was my favorite one.
With we all know how expensive Air Jordans are. They have always been ridiculously expensive.
Share Jordans.
And they just like dig into it with this episode. They call them Share Jordans, where they're so expensive that you have to start a payment plan and you have to split the shoes with a friend.
So they had like they're tied together. One person was the right foot, one person was the left foot. They're the overpriced shoe of the generation.
Nice.
And then they did
Paula Abdul-Jabbar.
that was really funny.
It was bizarre.
That was weird.
It was like a 10-second sketch, and it was super weird.
For a second I thought that was Rosario Dawson on top.
Oh, it kind of did look like
but
her.
it wasn't her. I looked.
No.
I like what they said. They said the officially genetically mutated man-woman of the U.S. Olympic team. I actually liked this episode quite a bit. They had an inflatable boob sketch.
Which was funny, because this episode, I think, had the most moments that were just pure, WTF. Why are they doing this?
But they stuck with the theme, and they kept going, every time there was a joke, they would be the official whatever, and they would just go with it. But, there was a girl who had, inflatable bra, and then a boy is that's awesome. Do they make it for men? And they all crouch and, point at his groin. And I was like, what?
They just go for it.
And then they had the chair Jordans, the official no activity shoe. They put 90210 on blast.
They did.
I don't even remember how it came up.
Jock itch? They did a jock itch.
They did a
sketch?
jock itch thing, and then they're 90210, the official pointless, overacted teenage show of the Olympic team. But this one was kind of funny, and then this one had the most dancing numbers. Literally, they would go 30 seconds of sketch, and then a minute dance, and then 30 seconds of sketch, and then a minute dance.
It's funny that you like this one the most, because I thought this was the weakest of the three that we watched.
Maybe I like it the most because it was the most recent one we watched right before recording. We literally watched it and started recording.
Right. I mean, it was bizarre. And it's weird. There are so many aspects of this that you watch it and you're like, what? I'm not sure that worked, but it's fun to watch because it's so raw. It's nice and refreshing to see a show where they don't edit out all the awkward parts. It's not polished. There are jokes that don't land, and they just keep going.
I think what I liked about this episode is I think the pacing was more consistent. I think all the other episodes had waves where really high intensity and then it kind of slowed down, and then high intensity and then it slowed down. I don't feel like this one. I feel like this one was all rise. It didn't stop, and I felt like it was.
What was the moral lesson from this episode?
I think the moral part was saying that girls can do sports too, because the dad kept trying to act like his daughter shouldn't be playing sports, and the daughter really wanted to.
Yeah, see, I totally missed that.
So yeah, there was the daughter who wanted to play baseball, and they're like, you can't. So then she joined track, and the whole episode, the brother. That's when the 90210 thing came up. Is the brother's like, oh, watch TV with me. She's like, no, I got to keep practicing. I want to be the best. And then the dad's like, hey, let's go shopping. And she's like, no, I need to keep practicing. So it was girls can play sports.
Right.
And then they picked one that's not really, I mean, it's a sport, but it's the one that is just running, as opposed to she wanted to play baseball or basketball, but she got to do running.
Hey, don't knock track.
Oh, no, it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's she really wanted to do these ones, and then she got second place, and the dad's like, do better next time. But I feel running's, I'm not a good runner, but I feel it would have been nice if she did baseball or basketball, because the brother sucked at baseball, and if she did softball and was really good at it.
Right.
I think it would have been a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, this
enduring.
episode had a lot of sketches that were just kind of calling out pretty common childhood experiences.
Right. Getting picked last.
We all had that friend whose dad coached the softball team who was a freaking psychopath and pushed his child way beyond what's reasonable or ethical.
Right.
And they did a sketch about that.
Water. That was weird.
I mean, I would love to actually watch more of these. Not necessarily because the show is fantastic. I think it's good, it's entertaining, it's solid. But what I liked most about it was that even though I don't remember any of these individual sketches, I did not remember a single thing that we watched, but it makes me remember parts of my childhood that I completely forgot about, which is weird because I'm 30. It's not that old.
I get what you're saying. So, would you say childhood ruined, or do you think it held up for you?
I think it's completely different from what I remember. I thought it was going to be a lot more like All That. I thought it was going to be goofier and quirkier. I didn't remember the cast being all 30-year-olds. That was a little weird.
Yeah, they were all late 20s, early 30s. Some of them looked like they were pushing 40. One of them looked like Billy Crudup.
Right. I looked them up, and I think they were legitimately all early 20s, but for some reason in the 90s, 20-year-olds looked a lot older, and just because of the way they did their hair and their makeup and their clothing. Yeah, so the cast was a lot older than I remembered. There were no kids in this cast.
No, this wasn't All That.
No
All That
teenagers whatsoever. It was basically In Living Color, but made for
Children.
adolescents.
Adolescent. Yeah, I'd say that makes sense. So, ruined your childhood or no?
No. I think I really like it, and it's enjoyable to watch. It's entertaining, but you do actually have to pay attention.
You do.
Which I like. You know, it's nice to have something where you have to actually just, like, sit back and watch it. You can't be, you know, playing Tetris on your phone or doing whatever, like folding laundry. You actually have to watch it, because if you don't watch it, you miss all the best funny parts.
Well, each sketch comes back in the episode. So if something they say at the beginning of the episode comes back multiple times. So you really do have to pay attention from beginning to end.
Right. I would be curious to see how it changes from season 1 through, was like 5 seasons?
No, there was only 3 seasons.
Oh, well, 3 seasons. Fine then.
Or 4. 3 or 4. I'll double check.
I'd be interested to see like how it changes throughout the seasons, but you know, it's one of those shows that kind of like got lost to time, and there's so many things that we watched as kids that you can't find them anywhere, and this one was really difficult to find, and we only got season 1 episodes.
Yeah, so there was 4 seasons, 52 episodes total. It ran from 92 to 95.
Dang.
So for me, obviously I've never seen this before. Initially, there was a lot of groaning and eye rolling, but there was legitimately some moments that I enjoyed. I didn't like the family episode all that much. Like, there were a couple jokes in there that landed. I liked the new kid one a little bit better than I liked the sports one. I think I needed to be eased into the show.
Right.
It's also not what I expected based off your initial description. Like, I was expecting something more along the lines like all that. Like,
yeah.
And it's nothing like all that. But then once I realized that it was like living color, I kind of got on board a little bit with it. I'm not really like a music person. I wasn't really into musical stuff as a kid. And then, as you know, I've never really been into musicals until like Greatest Showman I loved for whatever reason. I mean, it's a great movie, but that one kind of clicked. So I don't know. Like, I didn't love it. And I think talking about it on the podcast as we're recording, I kind of got a little bit more of appreciation just talking about it.
Yeah.
While watching it, I wasn't super into it, but kind of talking about it, I'm kind of liking it a little bit more. Like, once we kind of dissected and realized like how much work they put into it,
right,
I kind of appreciated it a little bit more.
You know what's interesting is it kind of like made me remember that being able to dance was like a really sexy thing in the 90s. Like any of the hottest guys knew how to dance, and like these days it's definitely not a thing, but back then it was pretty universal. Dancing
nowadays is just like grinding.
Right. So, you know, it's interesting to see a show where like dancing was such a huge part of the formula.
Right. Because like you had all the night, like the boy bands dance, you know, New Kids on the Block, Backstreet Boys, Usher,
yeah,
and Sync, they all had to dance.
Right. And now if you are, you know, a male artist and you're dancing in a video, like it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
For most of them.
Yeah, I agree. So overall for me, I didn't love it. I know you said I hated it earlier. I wouldn't say I hated it. I'd say there was some indifference, but some respect.
Right.
I think that's fair.
That's fair.
All right. So, Katrina.
Yes.
What are we watching for our next episode?
Jurassic Park.
Hold on to your butts. Do you remember who says that?
No.
Samuel Jackson.
Oh.
I'm really excited.
He's in Jurassic Park?
He's in Jurassic Park.
How did I completely forget? I think I'm just so like overwhelmed by the Goldblum that nothing else is...
And it's been 25 years since this movie came out.
Nothing else matters but that
sexy Goldblum.
Sexy Jeff Goldblum.
He's pretty good.
He's gotten a lot better with age. He's a hot older dude.
You should watch him in The Fly. You see his buns.
Oh, I'm there. Let's do it.
So where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity.
And you can check us out at MDXpods.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at MDXpods. If you want to, we're also on that weird Vero app. Once again, who cares? Nobody's really on it. And I guess it's owned by like some Saudi prince or something like that. It's weird. Yeah. You can support the show on patreon.com/MDXpods. We put these episodes on there early. Plus, we have some extra rewards, so check it out there.
Use our Audible link, guys. It helps us out when you use our Audible link.
It's audibletrial.com/MDXpods. It's in the episode description every episode. Get a free book.
We get a little kickback.
You can cancel it and keep the book at any time. Well, you
can
always keep the book, but you can cancel it anytime and keep the book. And we get a kickback. Or you get a kickback.
Kick the box.
Snack dick.
Snack dick.
Other than that, I think I hit all the plugs. Did we hit all the plugs?
We hit all the plugs.
All right. Thanks for listening, fools.
Thank you.